And welcome to yet another edition of Ben's Junk, the home of some of the tidiest junk on the internet. And let's tidy up a few loose ends. I guess that was half a pun. Anyway, as you hopefully saw last week, I did an episode on DBX, a regular archive episode on DBX noise reduction. And one of the things that came with that were the DBX encoded discs, which would more or less eliminate surface noise. I mean, if there's still a real egregious pop or a skip or something, you're still going to hear it, but most of it gets filtered out. But anyway, I figured, making that episode, okay, I've kind of dipped my toe a little bit into the whole audiophile thing. I might as well just finish up the concept and go through all of the audiophile music-y stuff that I've got. Which, this is going to sound kind of weird given how notoriously big my music collection is, but the amount of audiophile LPs and CDs and stuff that I have is very small. So this probably won't take very long. But anyway, let's start with the 4 DBX discs again, just quickly here. So first we've got the one that was not excerpted in the episode, and that is The Police's Zenyatta Mandata, and I found this to be the absolute worst sounding of the 4 DBX discs that I have found. I mentioned towards the end of the episode, or at the end of that episode, that DBX doesn't really do anything for that end of LP side sibilance, and that sibilance is really bad on this disc. And then add to that, I really don't know what went into the encoding, but it's like it overdid it. There's just something that sounds very overdone, even by DBX standards, about it, and I just do not like the sound of this one. Then we've got the Tchaikovsky disc, which was still sealed when I got it, and I opened it for the episode, and the shrink wrap was so loose on it that after I slit the side open and took the record out, and I even took the shrink wrap off at one point and took pictures, I decided I'd just put it back on. The shrink wrap was so loose that it fit right back on, and I figured, oh, what the hell, it'll be just kind of a weird little half-assed keep sleeve for this thing. I'm not really a big fan of classical on vinyl, but I guess if I had to listen to classical on vinyl, DBX would be a good way to go. Just because, with all the really quiet parts, it seems like a lot of times you're just hearing the surface noise more than anything else. But even then, I can't say I was too impressed with the sound on this thing. By vinyl standards, yeah, it's pretty good, but what we've come up with in the years since then, I think we've pretty well blown this out of the water. So then we've got Joan Armatrading's self-titled album, and I already had this on standard vinyl, which you heard a bit of, and I always thought the standard LP sounded really muddy. But I was kind of pleasantly surprised when I revisited that disc for the episode. It just sounded a little better than I remembered. But I also have it on CD, and I think I prefer the CD in the greater scheme of things. And I think this is the best sounding of the DBX discs that I own. It just seems to be the most balanced and the least prone to the little bits of artifacting that even DBX couldn't really do anything about. So after that, we've got the last of the DBX discs, and that's Loggins Messina's Full Sail. I have 4 copies of this album, and it's not because I think it's a really good album. If anything, I don't think I've ever really been able to get much beyond the singles of this one. I mean, 2 or 3 cuts. And I just feel like they really, that album cover is no accident. They really go for the whole on the waters and islandy sort of vibe, and they just take it way too far as I'm concerned. So, but it's just one of those records that I just keep finding. So I found the DBX disc. I already had an audiophile disc. spoiler. And when I was preparing to make the DBX episode, I found a copy of the standard LP in a thrift store bin, so I picked that up. But before I ever had it on vinyl at all, I have had it and still have it on CD, which I plucked out of a thrift store bin. So it's just one of those albums I keep running into over and over and over again, and who knows, maybe there'll be some other archivism that this record ties into. Who knows? Now, here's that audiophile copy of Full Sail, and this was made by a company called Direct Disc Labs, and I think they did a pretty damn good job with that one. My copy's a bit worn, and I think you might have heard that in the episode, but I think they did a really nice job with it, and honestly, as I said in the episode, if I'm going to do vinyl, given the choice between DBX, audiophile, and standard vinyl, I'd probably take the audiophile stuff every time. But I had never heard of Direct Disc before this, and it doesn't look like they lasted very long, but I thought they did a perfectly good job with this one, even if I'm not that big a fan of the record. And so speaking of not being too big a fan, whenever I find audiophile discs in thrift store bins and stuff, I just pick them up, whether I like the music or not. And so here is kind of the ultimate perennial in Weather Channel music, Chuck Mangione's Feels So Good. And there's not much to say about it. If anything, the title track, if you've watched the Weather Channel for 15 minutes in your life, you've probably heard it. And otherwise, I do kind of get a weird kick out of that album cover. I don't know why. And then moving on to something probably a little more in my ballpark to a point. Pablo Cruz, A Place in the Sun. And Pablo Cruz is one of those bands, late 70s pop group, that I kind of enjoy their singles and stuff. Haven't really been able to get into their albums too much, but I guess I just have that soft spot for that kind of late 70s and early 80s yacht rock. And this one, I did not, let me get to the tag here. I did not buy this at Twist and Shout, which is a record store in Denver, which I used to pretty much live at a long, long time ago, back when I was a teenager and in college, but I don't really go there much anymore, maybe once a year. I did not buy it there, and I did not pay $3.99. I think I paid 99 cents for this one. Sounds really nice, though. And then I use this one, George Benson's Breezin', in lieu of a stereo test disc on the stereo test disc episode, because I felt like it did a better job at helping me gauge things like frequency response with my turntable and with my stereo setup in general. And that's pretty much what I find this album to be good for. It's one of those things that's just not really an album for me. I've never been much of a jazz person, especially smooth jazz. It says featuring This Masquerade, his rendition of the Leon Russell song. I'll take Leon's version every day, if I'm going to be honest. It's not a bad record or anything, but it's background music, as far as I'm concerned. I guess that's the best way I can put it. And rather amusingly, somebody decided to test out their hole punch on this copy. That wasn't me. But I've always wondered, whoever owned this must have had kids or something, because I can't imagine anyone else goofing off with a paper punch on an expensive audiophile record. Thankfully, they didn't try it on the disc itself. Now, let's get to the CDs. I've only got 4, and that'll be it for this one. But this first one is one of those kind of proprietary things. It's from a line of gold discs that Columbia put out in, I think, the late 90s. And I think it sounds absolutely awful. And it's Robert Johnson, King of the Delta Blues Singers, which I think was the first major compilation of his stuff, and I think it came out in the early 60s. Of course, the recordings are from the mid-late 30s. But I had already owned this one on cassette. I had bought it at Tower Records on cassette when they were closing out the cassettes, probably in the early to mid-2000s. And honestly, I think my cassette sounds better than this thing. This for a supposed audiophile disc, this sounds just freakishly, unnaturally bright, and way brighter than anything that something from the 30s should ever sound. So I've held on to it just more because it's a gold disc, but honestly, weird as it sounds, I think my cassette sounds better. Now, I did that Police album early on, so here's Sting's first solo album. This was another thrift store find, and just like all of these, actually all of these are thrift store finds. And Dream of the Blue Turtles, there's exactly one song I like on here, Fortress Around Your Heart, and that's about it. And it sounds okay as far as I'm concerned. I've never heard the regular CD, but I can't imagine the regular CD sounds too different from this. And then here's the one album that I have on a gold disc that I really do like, and I've had it kicking around my collection in various formats since I was a teenager. And I've always loved the band, Robbie Robertson and the band, music from Big Pink and all that. And when I was a teenager, I found a copy of Robbie Robertson's first proper solo album, and that was on CD. But just in the last 6 months or so, I found it on gold disc in a thrift store, and they kind of altered the artwork, especially with the text for this one. But this one, I think, does sound a bit better than the regular CD. It seems to have a little more heft to it. It just seems to have a better frequency response all around, and I think it kind of goes a little better with the kind of dusty ambience that he was, I think, shooting for, and that you can hopefully kind of see on the album cover. And then the last one for today is a bit of a curiosity. As far as I know, this album was made specifically for Mobile Fidelity, and I don't think it's ever been issued anywhere else. But it's called Computer Music by an artist named Michael McNab, somebody I had never heard of, and somebody I haven't been able to find much in the way of information on. But this is a avant-garde, bleep, bloop kind of computer sound, computer music. So somebody's approximation of what music coming from a computer circa 1979, I think, would sound like. And honestly, it's not bad. Normally, I'm not a big avant-garde person, but it's kind of one of those things that you can just put on and just kind of drift off to. I guess it's a bit like maybe some early Pink Floyd in that regard, minus the lyrics and the more traditional instrumentation, but just these soundscapes, these, again, bleepy bloopy soundscapes that actually kind of work. So this thing's pretty trashed, but it's not bad. I'm glad I picked this up, and I guess that's one of the things about when you just indiscriminately pick these things up when you find them at the right price. But anyway, that's it for this Ben's junk. Let me just throw these back in the shot, give you something to look at. That's it for this one. Hopefully you enjoyed my usual verbose, tangent-driven little discussion here. But I'll see you again soon.